I'm Andrei Stepankowsky. Thank you for joining us today for this recital, and welcome to the piano studio of Martin Kauble. As you might know, I'm the retired editor of the Daily News, but I'm also a piano student and my first avocation or first career aspiration was to be a concert pianist. I obviously didn't do that, but I tried to keep it up and I still enjoy playing. And this is my 8th recital that I've given in Longview over the years. And it's, in addition to being a charity recital and for a good cause, it is my little way of trying to keep the spark of classical music alive, because I don't think there's any music better than that of the great masters. It's the beauty, the sophistication, and the ennobling that it gives me is something that I don't get from any other music. I love it so much, and I'm just so lucky to be able to continue to share it with people. I want to thank Martin here for obviously instructing me, but also for hosting this recital in his studio. And I'd also like to thank our videographer, Jackson Gillahan, for shooting this thing and bearing with us throughout this afternoon. Today's recital will benefit Family Promise of Cowlitz County, which is a very successful organization that helps homeless people here in our community. About halfway through the recital, you'll hear from the Family Promise president, Lisa Staudinger, who'll tell you all about what Family Promise does and how the proceeds from this recital will help. Remember that the webpage will be up and it will give you an opportunity to donate through that means. And we hope that everybody can be generous. The first piece on our program is by Frédéric Chopin, who was born in 1810 and died in 1847. Most of the pieces in our recital today were composed in the 19th century, which was really the zenith of piano composition and piano performance. Educated people all played the piano. There was a piano in every home, and the salon recital was a very common way of introducing new music to people, and that gives some rise to the recital that we're having today, which Martin and I kind of considered a salon recital, right, Martin?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
I mean, because they were much more intimate and settings than a big concert stage. In fact, Chopin largely played his first pieces at small soirees and salons rather than in concerts. So he's our first composer on the program today, and I'm going to play the Nocturne in C sharp minor. Chopin is often called the poet of the piano. He created a whole new way of composing and playing the piano, composing for and playing the piano. The piano is no longer just a percussion instrument where it sounds like a bunch of hammers hitting the keys, which is what it actually does. In Chopin's music and in his playing, the music has a much more rich color and depth of sonority. His music is known for its unsurpassed charm and richness, and it combines virtuosity and a tremendous amount of harmonic daring. You can tell a piece by Chopin almost from the first bar. I mean, his harmonies are so distinctive, and it has a dissonant quality that's even apparent in his most beloved and powerful melodies. A lot of his music was influenced by the fact that he was from Poland. He spent his adult years all in France, but his music was influenced by his Polish upbringings, Polish songs and folk music, especially in the mazurkas, the polonaises, and the waltzes. The nocturnes, however, are a little bit of a different ballgame, right, Martin?
Absolutely.
Why don't you talk a little bit about, his model was John Field, an American composer.
Irish composer.
Irish composer, sorry.
Yep.
Sorry.
And John Field wrote 18 nocturnes, and the idea of a nocturne is a broken bass line with a right hand melody, or the melody, it could even be in the left hand, but basically it's this broken chord figure with a singing melody in the right hand, which carries it off like a solo instrument.
so you're gonna, this piece, Chopin didn't like what we call program music. He didn't assign a name to any of his pieces, but it's nevertheless hard not to think of this nocturne as the tale of a thunderstorm, because it starts with again, that arpeggiated bass is very tranquil, and then it goes into a middle section that's very, very violent, if you will. I mean, you can hear the flashes of thunder in the right hand, and the flashes of lightning in the right hand, and the roll of thunder in the left hand. And then it comes back to the original theme, and it's very serene, and you can almost hear these raindrops hitting the ground and the foliage, when that original theme returns. And then the piece, although it's written in C minor, it ends in C sharp major, which gives it this kind of burst of sunshine and happiness of a brilliantly clear sunrise in the morning after the storm. So without further ado...
Oh, one other thing.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, about the nocturnes. Nocturne means night music. Yes. And so the idea was, it's not like a couple sitting on the front porch swing with the light out, No. It's the mysteries of the night and stars falling from the sky is what what the nocturnes are all about. The mysteries of the night.
So here we go. Okay, thank you for coming back. I hope you enjoyed the Chopin. The next piece on the program is a piece by Robert Schumann, who was a German Viennese composer who was born in 1810 and died in 1856. This piece is one of his best known pieces, and it's very short. It's called Träumerei, which means in German reverie or dream, if you wish. This is from a book called Scenes from Childhood. Schumann was married to a woman named Clara Schumann, who was the daughter of his piano teacher. Her name was Clara Wieck Schumann. And he composed these pieces. When he composed these pieces, he told her that he called them these small little droll things, and they were inspired by her comment that sometimes he seemed like a child. Schumann had a tragic death. He had insanity ran in his family, and he died in an insane asylum where he spent the last 2 years of his life. But his music was quintessentially romantic. It's highly personal. It's poetic. It's like this piece, very introspective and intimate, suggestive, and it's generally not showy. And it's often surprisingly polyphonic, meaning that it has many different voices and melodic lines. Träumerei proves that a piece doesn't have to be long and it doesn't have to be flashy to be gorgeous. Indeed, despite Schumann's considerable output, he wrote a lot, a lot for the piano, lots of symphonies, a lot of all kinds of music. But he often said that posterity would probably remember him best for some of the short pieces. And that's certainly true of Träumerei because it's probably his best known piece. As simple as it sounds, it's really a little fugue. And it could easily be transcripted into a trio or even a quartet for piano, violin, and cello. And it's based on just a small little figure. And it's like this. And then it repeats another time at a higher register. And then it repeats. And then the climax comes like this. But it's the notes are a little bit different, and it's in a different harmony. But it's, let's see here. Oops. That's what the piece is based on. It's delightful.
Oh yes, there you go. And I think it's approached before that little bit comes in with an F7 chord, F-A-C flat, which is the dominant of B flat minor, right? And so there you go. There's all kinds of stuff like that.
The music educator and classical music champion Rob Kaplow says that little chord is a little epiphany.
Oh, okay.
So I hope this sends you. I hope you get an epiphany out of this piece.
There you go.
thank you for coming back, and I hope you enjoyed the Traumerei and that it wasn't traumatic. Anyway, the next piece on our program today is by Franz Schubert, who is another German composer. He lived from 1797 to 1828. He was only 31 years old when he died, and on his tomb in Vienna is written, quote, "The art of music here entombed a rich possession, but even far greater hopes." Because it's tragic that somebody who had such a fertile mind and such a fertile composition imagination died so young. Yet he still was prolific. He wrote 9 symphonies. He wrote 600 songs, and he's probably he's probably the best known songwriter among all classical musicians. He once said to other people, he said that his sole purpose in life was to compose, and he composed. As a composer, he was something of a bridge from the classical style of Haydn and Mozart to the Romantic period. But his music, in some ways, is kind of hard to really categorize. It's not really what you would call romantic, in the sense that it's not tremendously highly personal. It's not really dissonant in any real stretch of the imagination, here and there. And it still has throwbacks to Haydn and Mozart. And the impromptu I'm going to play is going to demand that kind of piano technique.
Well, and the forms too. You get into section A, B, A, these kinds of things too. So there's a certain type of formulaic things that happen as well that are borrowed, from the other past century. But yeah, absolutely, he's definitely, in that blending part of it. Mm-hmm. There are other composers like that too, but Schubert definitely. If you didn't know his pieces, I think, at least for me, because there are a lot of pieces of his, as is with other composers too, that I'm with which I'm not familiar. If I heard it probably by itself, I would wonder, well, golly sakes, is that Mozart, Schubert, Haydn? So yeah, it is that characteristic.
The impromptu in E flat that I'm about to play shows how inventive he was. I mean, Schubert was known for changing keys very easily and quickly. Impromptu, of course, is from the word imprompt, meaning that it was sort of has to sound like it was made up at the moment. Well, this was not made up at the moment, but it has elements of that feel. Like it has an improvisational feel with a lot of repetition. It does migrate from one key to another very suddenly, and so it'll often repeat themes in a different key. This one follows what we call A-B-A-B form, where you have the theme that's, it's basically the first part is a scale in E flat major, and then the middle section is an angry section in B minor, and then it returns to that scale A section, and then it comes back to the B section, but it has a much more harsh and dissonant closure, and it was really kind of a stormy ending. So yes. I hope you enjoy it.
Yes, definitely an ending that would come from the Romantic period.
That's right.
No question about that.
So, hope you enjoy it.
Thank you for joining us today for Andrei Stepankowsky's wonderful recital. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. I'm Lisa Staudinger, Executive Director of Family Promise of Cowlitz County, and we are so glad you are with us. This is a benefit recital to raise money for Family Promise of Cowlitz County. If you're not familiar with Family Promise, our mission is to assist families with dependent children who are suffering homelessness to achieve sustainable independence and stabilize in their own homes. Andre is generously donating the proceeds of this recital to help Family Promise remodel our family center to double our capacity. We've been struggling with our capacity being cut in half since the beginning of the pandemic, when guests could no longer stay at our partner congregations, and we moved them into the day center, which is now the family center. Our very first guest in shelter was Hillary, mother of 2 teens and a baby. When Hillary came to us, she had been homeless for a long time. Her baby boy was born in a shelter. When she came to our program, we helped Hillary get birth certificates and all kinds of other important documentation and get her kids enrolled in school. While she was with us, Hillary worked so hard. She enrolled at LCC, got her driver's license, and managed to save up to buy a good used car so she could get to work, get herself and the kids to school, shop, and take care of life. Hillary also managed to get about the last apartment rented before the pandemic shut down, got a part-time job, and now works full-time. She and her kids are in a safe, stable situation today. And Hillary has been invited to participate in the Family Promise National Guest Advisory Board. She's thinking it over. Because we work to connect our guests with already existing community resources, Family Promise can provide our shelter services for about 1/3 of the cost of traditional shelters. Since Hillary, we've sheltered 20 more families with 42 children and helped 146 families in crisis outside of our shelter program. All of our guests who have completed our program have found a rental and remain stably housed to this day, because Family Promise is not just about a bed for the night, but a bed for life. If you would like to support the work of Family Promise of Cowlitz County, you can donate via our webpage, www.fpcowlitz.org. We are a state-registered charity and a 501c3 nonprofit. All donations stay local, so you know your gift makes a difference to children and their families right here in our own community. Family Promise envisions a Cowlitz County in which every child has a home. Your gift today will help us expand our capacity so that we can help even more families. And now, back to the recital and Andre's lovely performances of timeless classics. Enjoy.
Okay, welcome back. Appreciate you coming back to YouTube and listening to what we have to say and what I have to play. The next piece on the program is by Franz Liszt, who lived from 1811 to 1886, and the piece is called the Consolation Number 3 in D flat major. Liszt was really, in many ways, the first rock star of music. He had good looks, he had magnetism, he had a colossal and unmatched piano technique. He was probably the greatest pianist that ever lived. He left audiences breathless and entranced. And he was the matinee idol of the day. Women would try to grab locks of his hair. They would fight over the strings of the piano that he would break. He would try to grab pieces of his clothing. A lock of his hair. Yep. And he played up to it. But Liszt also had a serious side, and even at a young age had considered taking holy orders. His early music is very obviously flamboyant, very technically difficult, very demanding. And if you had heard it, one of our classical music colleagues, Aubriana Church, played 11 of his works that were all kind of represent the early Liszt of fireworks with lyricism, and very difficult to play.
She actually did on the program played Constellations 1 and 2.
Okay.
And now you're doing the third one.
I'm playing 3. And these are very different. They're much more introspective.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're decidedly not full of razzle dazzle. And it's not what most people think of when they think of Liszt. They think of the pyrotechnics and the difficult pieces. Not that this is easy, but it's not in the same league as the others. But he composed these constellations between 1849 and 1850. At this point, he had given up his concert career and entered what some biographers consider a much more reflective period of his life. And later on, he took sort of minor orders. I mean, he was still called Mephistopheles in a cassock because he was still had that devilish personality about him. But the constellations, again, are a different type of Liszt than you're used to hearing. It's not sure what kind of consolation he's trying to give. There's some speculation that since this one that I'm going to play is very reminiscent of Chopin's nocturnes, in particular the nocturne in D flat, it has a similar arpeggiated section that perhaps Liszt was in some ways commemorating Chopin, who had just passed away. This composition coincides with his death, so either consciously or subconsciously, it's possibly a tribute to him. Other people have speculated that it's based on the poetic and religious harmonies, a group of poems by the French poet and philosopher Lamartine, in which the poetry talked about friendship was extolled as a consolation for the loss of religious faith. So we don't really know, but what do you think, Martin? What do you think of what he's trying to get at here?
I have a copy of the original edition, Breitkopf and Hertel, and in the front of it, there's a little writing. It says, and I'm paraphrasing, but it says, "Who would imagine that these beautiful pieces came from the mighty warrior Franz Liszt?" It speaks of who has not felt in the night or times of sadness that you did not need some consolation of music, consolation, and so that's it. And I actually, it's very romantically written, this little treatise about, and it actually appeared in a little periodical about these pieces when they came out. So who has not ever felt, in the night or loneliness that even it was just a little consolation, even a little consolation of notes or music is the thought that came from this writer.
So prepare for an ethereal experience. This gorgeous piece.
And it is a nocturne, isn't it? I mean,
it certainly has the feel of one.
Yeah.
So enjoy. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for coming back. Hope you enjoyed the list. The next piece on our program is by the French Impressionist composer Claude Debussy, who was born in 1862 and died in 1918. He's the only composer on our program today that lived into the 20th century. And the piece that I'm playing today, it was actually composed in the 20th century in 1910. It's called, and I'll help you with the pronunciation, La plus que lente, which means a little bit of slowness, or a little bit more of slow. Before I discuss it a little bit, let me discuss Debussy as a composer. He's known as one of the original of what's called Impressionist composers, though he didn't actually like the term. But however, his music is very descriptive with tonal images and descriptive names like Reflections on the Water, Gardens in the Rain. And so the piano here is made to give a tonal picture of a physical thing. And that's what the Impressionists were trying to do, both in music and in art. Debussy was a big fan of the Impressionist artists like Monet and Turner. And his music thus evokes visual images and very potent emotions. His music is known for its very distinctive harmonies. They're almost Asian in their nature and their textures. It's very personal and very tactile. You almost feel like you're going to sink into the keys when you're playing Debussy, as if you're trying to extract the maximum sonority out of the instrument. La plus que lente was a work of his maturity, and again, it means a little bit more of slow. And it's a waltz, but Martin, why don't you talk a little bit? It's definitely a waltz. It's written in 3/4 time, but does it feel like a waltz, do you think?
Absolutely. It's almost like a theme and variations on a waltz. And it has a very nostalgic feel to it. Almost as if someone were thinking back or remembering the waltz. A waltz. It would not be a piece or a waltz that would be danced to. The piece is about the waltz idea. So you'll hear in the piece all these different changes that come about. I'm still mystified why he named it a little bit more of slow or slower than slow or that kind of thing. But it's interesting because Debussy's pieces, so many of them came in groups. The preludes, so to speak, the Children's Corner Suite, these kinds of things, Suite Bergamasque, all these different ones. But there were these solo gems that came along, this being one of them.
One of them, yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Again, this piece, as Martin said, is very sensual and very sad. And Debussy's directions are to play it with sadness and a free and very unrestrained tempo. And to put it in Debussy's words, it's necessary to abandon yourself completely and let the music do with you as it will.
There you go.
And if there is an impression here, I like to think of this as a tone painting or a memory of a couple slowly dancing in a bistro or perhaps a bar, perhaps for the last time. It has definitely a melancholy sort of wistfulness to it. And it's just filled with tenderness and passion. It has its angry moments, and it has a sense of finality, especially in the last chord.
Well, I was going to say something about that. About we're not going to give that away. No. The ending is a bit of just a little surprise.
Yes, it is.
It isn't. It is. It's almost. I don't know how else to put it, but it's just kind of okay.
Some people consider it weird. The word about the middle section, which is the angry section, is often taken by pianists at a very, very fast tempo, very too fast in my opinion.
Ditto.
And I think it makes it too angry, and I think it puts it out of character and out of the mood of the piece. It obviously has to be passionate, and I hope I play it with that. But I'm hearkening back to an earlier piece. I'm going to quote Clara Schumann, who said, "Why hurry over beautiful things?" And so I hope you agree with my interpretation, and I hope you enjoy La plus que lente. All right, thank you for coming back. I hope you enjoyed La Plus que Lent. The last piece on our program today is by Edvard Grieg, a Norwegian composer who was born in 1841 and died in 1907. I just realized now that I said he was Debussy was the only one of our composers today that lived into the 20th century, but Grieg lived 7 years into the 20th century. Most of his work dates from the 19th century, however. Grieg, the name of the piece today I'm going to play is called The Wedding Days at Trollhaugen, which is difficult to say, and it's actually a combination of the Norwegian words for troll and hill. And Trollhaugen is actually the name of the house that Grieg and his wife, Nina, lived in for many, many years, and where he and his wife are actually buried. He composed this piece for the 25th anniversary of their wedding. And even though it's called The Wedding Day at Trollhaugen, it should be I always think of it as the wedding bells at Trollhaugen, because it's filled with bells. It just sounds like wedding bells overlapping and pealing and being quiet and loud, and it's just a very joyous and almost, it's a romp. It's just a wonderful piece with a very tender middle section. Grieg was, as I said, a native of Norway, and he's often called the Chopin of the North because his music is very lyrical. It has kind of Chopin-esque charm and poetry, even if it, I think, lacks kind of the depth and the unique harmonic aspects of Chopin.
Yeah,
but
more of the harmonic narrative.
Yes, but I mean, he's certainly a composer who's worth listening to and keeping alive. He doesn't represent revolution or power, but he represents charm and grace and sweetness. And Martin, you've had sort of a not always loved Grieg, as from what you've told me in the past.
Well, there are pieces of Grieg's that I really love. Of course, the famous concerto and whatnot. And there's the March of the Dwarfs. And there are these little ones. It always, it's very nationalistic music. There's no question about it.
Definitely.
Chopin's is also nationalistic, but there's just more depth to it. But that's not to take away from Grieg. I mean, I couldn't do it.
It's just pure fun. This piece is just
it's a
pure fun.
And you know what's interesting? It came back to me, and I was researching this last week. When I was in grade school, Columbia Heights Elementary, I'm pretty sure it was third grade. So our class, we went to, it would have been here in town. So I think it would have been when the Columbia Theater was still a movie theater, or it may have been in Kelso. I can't remember the exact location, but there was a movie playing, and our teacher took us, the whole class, and we went and saw this movie, and it was the movie was made in 1970, Song of Norway, and it was about Edvard Grieg. Yeah, and I still remember that to this day, and I still remember who I sat next to, my friend Brian McCrae, crazy, but I remember all this stuff. Yeah, so here I sat in a theater as a kid watching a documentary, a life story about Edvard Grieg.
Well, this is our final piece. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for joining me. And again, I want to thank Martin for hosting this and helping me get through this experience, and to Jackson for Jackson, and recording it.
All right.
And please remember to donate to Family Promise. It's doing very important work in our community. And I hope that you can be as generous as possible. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the wedding days at Trollhausen. It's hard to say.
It is hard to say.
Yes.
Thank you.